Power in the Harry Potter story isn't about screen time or spell strength. It's about who actually changes outcomes. Some characters act once and reshape everything. Others spend years quietly steering events from the background, like Horace Slughorn. Slughorn's most influential action is not something he does publicly, heroically, or bravely. It is something he withholds and eventually releases. As a young professor, Slughorn teaches Tom Riddle about Horcruxes, a piece of advanced dark magic that allows a wizard to anchor fragments of their soul to physical objects. This conversation directly enables Voldemort's method of survival. Slughorn does not create the idea, but he confirms it, legitimizes it, and fails to stop it. Years later, Slughorn alters his own memory of that conversation, removing the incriminating details. Wizards are lucky. When Muggles want to alter their memory, they have to drink until they black out and hope that the brain cells they killed were the ones containing the stuff they wanted to forget. This falsified memory delays Dumbledore's understanding of Voldemort's immortality and, by extension, delays the entire war effort against him. The damage is not caused by malice, but by shame. Slughorn knows he made a catastrophic error and chooses concealment over accountability. His pivotal moment comes when he finally relinquishes the true memory. That single act allows Dumbledore, and later Harry, to understand the full Horcrux strategy. Once the number and nature of the Horcruxes are known, Voldemort becomes killable. Slughorn's influence, therefore, sits at both ends of the timeline. He enables Voldemort's rise, and later makes his defeat possible. An impressive legacy for a man whose main life skill is collecting famous teenagers. Ugh, not that way. Get your mind out of the gutter. Peter Pettigrew. Peter Pettigrew's most influential action is betraying the Potters and revealing their location to Voldemort. This single act results in the death of James and Lily Potter, the near death of Harry, and the creation of the central conflict of the entire series. Without Pettigrew's betrayal, there is no Boy Who Lived, no Prophecy Fulfilled, and no wizard-themed Monopoly games. The entire Harry Potter franchise and merchandising empire is a result of Peter Pettigrew's actions. So, depending on how you look at it, he may in fact be a bigger villain than Voldemort. Pettigrew's importance lies not in power, intelligence, or ideology, but in weakness. He defects to Voldemort out of fear, not because he actually aligns with his regime. He chooses the side that appears stronger, and spends the rest of his life proving why that choice never earns respect. Voldemort uses him, discards him, and eventually kills him without hesitation. Later, Pettigrew plays another critical role by helping resurrect Voldemort using dark ritual magic. He literally gives his hand and his blood to bring the Dark Lord back. Yet even here, Pettigrew's defining trait persists. When he briefly hesitates at Malfoy Manor, showing the smallest flicker of mercy, his enchanted silver hand strangles him to death. In this story, cowardice is not neutral. It actively shapes history, and it never goes unpunished. Kreacher. Kreacher's most influential action is switching allegiance. Initially, Kreacher is loyal to the Black family's worst values: blood purity, resentment, obedience enforced through cruelty, and the gross habit of putting pineapple on their pizza. This loyalty directly contributes to Sirius Black's death when Kreacher lies to Harry, manipulating him into going to the Department of Mysteries. Later, everything changes for a remarkably simple reason. Harry treats Kreacher with respect, gives him Regulus Black's locket, and acknowledges his pain rather than dismissing it. This alters Kreacher's loyalty completely. He becomes devoted, cooperative, and ultimately instrumental in helping Harry understand Regulus's defiance of Voldemort. Sadly, he never realizes just how nasty pineapple is as a pizza topping. Dobby. Dobby's most influential action is rescuing Harry and his friends from Malfoy Manor, an act that directly saves multiple lives and preserves the Horcrux mission at its most fragile point. At this stage of the story, Harry possesses critical information, the Sword of Gryffindor, and the trust of several key allies. Had Dobby not intervened, the war would have ended quietly in a cellar. Dobby achieves this rescue not through strength or status, but through independent magic and personal choice. Thanks to one of Harry Potter's sweaty gym socks, Dobby operates without a master, meaning his actions are not constrained by wizard authority. This independence allows him to disarm powerful Death Eaters, transport prisoners, and escape a fortified stronghold. Rubeus Hagrid. Hagrid's most influential role is not a single dramatic act, but consistent moral positioning. That and uttering the line, "You're a wizard, Harry," the most quoted line of the series, and the Harry Potter equivalent of,
"Luke, I am your father."
From the beginning, Hagrid introduces Harry to the wizarding world and immediately normalizes difference. Half-giants, Dragons, werewolves, and misunderstood creatures are not framed as threats to him, but as beings deserving protection. This outlook directly influences Harry's values. Hagrid repeatedly models compassion over fear, even when that compassion causes inconvenience, danger, or disciplinary action. He treats magical creatures and people based on behavior rather than reputation, a mindset that quietly undermines the blood purity ideology Voldemort depends on. During the final stages of the war, Hagrid physically carries Harry's seemingly dead body out of the forest, unintentionally triggering Voldemort's public miscalculation. This moment exposes Voldemort's failure to understand sacrifice and allows the final confrontation to unfold on Harry's terms. Hagrid does not win battles, but he consistently shapes the moral environment in which those battles occur. Cornelius Fudge. Cornelius Fudge's most influential action is denying Voldemort's return. After Cedric Diggory's death, Fudge chooses political stability over truth, suppressing evidence, discrediting Harry and Dumbledore, and framing the threat as hysteria. This decision paralyzes the Ministry at the exact moment coordinated resistance is required. I don't really blame him, though. Acknowledging Voldemort's return probably requires a lot of paperwork, and who has time for that? The consequences are immediate and severe. Voldemort regains followers, infiltrates institutions, and spreads fear unchecked while the government actively obstructs those trying to respond. Fudge's refusal to act does more damage than open collaboration would have, because it delays preparation across the entire wizarding population. Dolores Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge's most influential action is demonstrating how authoritarian control can function without open violence. As Hogwarts High Inquisitor, Umbridge enforces ministry rule through paperwork, decrees, surveillance, and punishment framed as discipline. She does not need to prove Voldemort exists or doesn't exist. Her role is to ensure no one is allowed to discuss it. Her use of blood quills, detentions, and educational decrees systematically removes independent thought from the school. Students are not taught to fight, question, or prepare. Instead, they are conditioned to comply. This creates the exact environment Voldemort later exploits, a population trained to obey authority even when that authority is clearly wrong. Even with all those horrible qualities, the worst thing about Dolores is her habit of wearing gross, Pepto-Bismol pink outfits exclusively. Ugh. Luna Lovegood. Luna Lovegood's most influential contribution is emotional stability in moments where logic fails. Throughout the series, Luna consistently accepts uncomfortable truths without panic. She believes Harry when others doubt him, not because of evidence, but because she recognizes honesty in his fear. That, and she's full-on Looney Tunes, believing every conspiracy theory she comes across. This matters most during the Horcrux hunt, when isolation, paranoia, and loss begin to fracture the group. Luna provides grounding without demanding control. She listens, reframes loss calmly, and speaks about death without dramatization. This allows others to process fear without being consumed by it. George Weasley. George Weasley's most influential moment comes after Fred's death. Up until that point, the twins operate as a unit, functionally inseparable, narratively interchangeable. When Fred is killed, George survives, permanently altered, and forced to continue alone. The only upside being that now Fred can't force him to dress up as one of the creepy twins from The Shining for Halloween. This matters because George embodies the cost of victory. The war ends, Voldemort falls, and peace technically returns, but George's future is irreversibly changed. His survival illustrates that winning does not mean restoration. Some losses are permanent, and success does not refund them. Fred Weasley. Fred Weasley's most influential role is sustained defiance through humor. During Voldemort's rise and the Ministry's takeover of Hogwarts, Fred uses comedy as disruption. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes is not just a business. It becomes a form of resistance, openly mocking authority figures who rely on fear and seriousness to maintain control. At Hogwarts, Fred's refusal to treat Umbridge with respect actively undermines her power. Authoritarian control depends on being taken seriously. Fred denies that currency entirely. His jokes spread faster than decrees, and his irreverence gives students psychological permission to disobey, laugh, and resist. Truly, the wrong twin died. Ugh, I think that joke may have been too dark, even for me. Molly Weasley. Molly Weasley's most influential action is killing Bellatrix Lestrange during the Battle of Hogwarts. Bellatrix is not just a Death Eater. She is Voldemort's most loyal lieutenant, responsible for torture, murder, and psychological terror. Molly confronts and eliminates her at the precise moment Bellatrix threatens Ginny. This act reframes power in the series. Molly is not a trained duelist, political leader, or chosen one. Her strength comes from protection, not ambition. She fights with absolute clarity of purpose, and Bellatrix's fanaticism collapses against it. Plus, Molly calls Bellatrix the B word, that rhymes with witch, causing millions of children to look up from their books and simultaneously gasp. There's a swear in Harry Potter? Before breaking out in giggles, as children are wont in the presence of bad words. Minerva McGonagall. Minerva McGonagall's most influential action is assuming command of Hogwarts during the final confrontation. When Snape flees and the Ministry collapses, McGonagall transitions instantly from educator to military leader. She secures the castle, mobilizes defenses, and coordinates resistance without hesitation. Her leadership matters because it is decisive and procedural. McGonagall understands the institution better than anyone present. She uses its systems, teachers, students, house structures, magical defenses, as functional assets rather than symbolic ones. Hogwarts becomes a fortress because she treats it as one. Bellatrix Lestrange. Bellatrix Lestrange's most influential role is absolute ideological devotion. She does not merely serve Voldemort. She believes in him. Unlike other Death Eaters motivated by fear, status, or self-preservation, Bellatrix treats Voldemort as a near-religious figure. This makes her uniquely dangerous and uniquely reliable. It also makes her gross because, who finds noseless snake men attractive? I'm not trying to kink shame, but the dude is barely human. Her actions reinforce Voldemort's power structure. She murders Sirius Black, tortures Neville Longbottom's parents into insanity, and acts as the primary enforcer of terror within the Death Eater ranks. Bellatrix's violence is not strategic, it is expressive. She enjoys cruelty because it validates her loyalty and identity. Plus, she probably gets off on it. Lucius Malfoy. Lucius Malfoy's most influential action is failing Voldemort at the exact moment loyalty is required. Once a high-ranking Death Eater, Lucius steadily unravels as Voldemort's war intensifies. His confidence erodes, his authority collapses, and his priorities shift from ideology to survival. This culminates during the Battle of Hogwarts, where Lucius looks around at all the carnage and says, "Screw this," abandoning Voldemort's cause entirely to search for Draco. At that point, the Malfoy family is no longer participating in the war. They are fleeing it. Lucius's defection exposes a key weakness in Voldemort's regime. Allegiance built on fear does not hold under existential pressure. Draco Malfoy. Draco Malfoy's most influential moment is getting punched out by Hermione. Okay, but after that, it's his many acts of hesitation. Throughout the series, Draco is positioned as a future Death Eater in training, indoctrinated, resentful, and increasingly trapped by expectations he never fully chose. When that expectation finally demands action, Draco repeatedly fails to deliver. His defining act occurs at Malfoy Manor, when he is asked to identify Harry Potter. Draco knows the answer. He has known Harry for years, and yet he refuses to confirm it. This single moment delays Voldemort's control and allows events to unfold that ultimately led to Voldemort's defeat. Ginny Weasley. Ginny Weasley's most influential role is survival, followed by escalation. As a child, she is possessed by Tom Riddle's diary, manipulated into reopening the Chamber of Secrets, and nearly killed. This is the first direct demonstration of Voldemort's ability to act through Horcruxes, long before anyone understands what a Horcrux is. What makes Ginny influential is not the possession itself, but what follows. She does not remain defined by it. Instead, she grows into one of the most active resistance figures at Hogwarts, openly defying the Carrows, participating in Dumbledore's army, and continuing the fight after Harry leaves the school. What? Okay, fine. Most fans know her best as Harry's love interest. Happy now? Jeez, you try and give a girl some autonomy and she's still defined by who she dates. Neville Longbottom. Neville Longbottom's most influential action is killing Nagini during the Battle of Hogwarts. At that moment, Nagini is Voldemort's final Horcrux. Destroying her removes the Dark Lord's last protection against death and makes his defeat possible. What makes this moment significant is Neville's trajectory. For most of the series, Neville is defined by fear, insecurity, and comparison. He is not chosen, not exceptional, and not confident. Yet, when the moment arrives, Neville acts without hesitation, stepping forward in front of Voldemort himself. It also helped his confidence. I'm sure that puberty was very kind to Neville Longbottom. Almost overnight, he went from an awkward tween doofus to the hottest hunk at Hogwarts. The killing Nagini thing, yeah. Remus Lupin. Remus Lupin's most influential action is choosing participation over withdrawal. As a werewolf, Lupin lives on the margins of wizarding society, conditioned to see himself as dangerous, unwanted, and better off absent. Repeatedly, he is tempted to disappear rather than engage. Despite this, Lupin fights in both wizarding wars, teaches Harry critical defensive magic, and remains active in the Order of the Phoenix. His attempted abandonment of Tonks and their child is stopped not by external force, but by confrontation with the cost of avoidance. In other words, when faced with the threat of paying child support for the next 18 years, he realizes it would just be cheaper to stay with his baby mama. Sirius Black. Sirius Black's most influential action is re-entering Harry's life after escaping Azkaban. For the first time, Harry is offered something he has never had before: an adult who treats him as family rather than responsibility. This reshapes Harry's understanding of loyalty, trust, and belonging at a critical point in his development. However, Sirius's influence is double-edged. He is emotionally arrested by the war that took his youth, and he struggles to separate Harry from the memory of James. His impatience, recklessness, and desire to relive past battles directly contribute to his death at the Department of Mysteries. Ron Weasley. Ron Weasley's most influential action is leaving the Horcrux hunt, and then returning. Under the Horcrux's influence, Ron's insecurities surface. Feelings of inadequacy, fear of insignificance, and resentment at always being second, which, let's be honest, is exactly what his character was created to be. Second fiddle to Harry Potter. If only Ron had been born with a fraction of Deadpool's fourth wall-breaking self-awareness, he could have saved himself a lot of tiresome BS. What makes Ron influential is not the failure, but the recovery. He chooses to come back without guarantees of forgiveness or success. He then destroys the Horcrux that manifests his worst fears, symbolically confronting the voice that has undermined him for years. Hermione Granger. Hermione Granger's most influential action is preparing for a future no one else fully accepts. Long before Voldemort's return is acknowledged, Hermione stockpiles knowledge, modifies memory charms, secures safe identities, and plans for displacement. She assumes collapse is possible and plans accordingly. Apparently, doomsday preppers also exist in the wizarding world. Her most consequential choice is erasing her parents' memories and sending them away. This removes her emotional safety net entirely, allowing her to operate without hesitation or divided loyalty while simultaneously making her parents forget about the time she tried to set the cat's tail on fire when she was 6. From that point onward, Hermione functions as the logistical core of the Resistance, maintaining resources, continuity, and strategic clarity. Severus Snape. Severus Snape's most influential action is maintaining an unhealthy, obsessive crush on Harry's mom. His cover as a double agent until his death. Every major contribution he makes to the defeat of Voldemort depends on long-term deception, earning Voldemort's trust, feeding him selective truths, and carrying out actions that make Snape appear irredeemable to everyone else. The critical moment comes when Snape kills Dumbledore on Dumbledore's own orders. This act secures Voldemort's absolute trust and positions Snape as headmaster during the final year. From that position, Snape covertly protects students, limits the Carrow's cruelty, and ensures that Harry receives the Sword of Gryffindor at the precise moment it is needed. Snape's legacy is built on isolation, secrecy, and being hated by the people he is ultimately trying to protect. The war is won partly because Snape is willing to be remembered as a villain. Lord Voldemort. Voldemort's most influential action is his attempt to conquer death by splitting his soul into Horcruxes. This decision defines both his rise and his failure. By fragmenting his soul, Voldemort ensures survival, but at the cost of stability, empathy, adaptability, and, apparently, his nose. His reliance on fear-based loyalty creates a regime that looks powerful but collapses under pressure. Followers obey him to avoid punishment, not out of belief. When his control weakens, that loyalty evaporates. Voldemort's inability to understand sacrifice blinds him to threats he cannot intimidate. The dying part he understands perfectly. It's the doing it to save someone else part that keeps tripping him up. Most critically, Voldemort repeatedly misreads Harry's actions because he cannot comprehend choices that do not prioritize survival. This flaw allows Harry to weaponize self-sacrifice against him. Voldemort loses not because he is outmatched magically, but because his worldview cannot process the rules of the conflict he created. Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore's most influential action is designing a strategy that requires his own death and Harry's suffering. Dumbledore understands Voldemort's psychology early and builds a plan that exploits it over decades. He withholds information, manipulates timelines, and places people where they will suffer but survive. His greatest contribution is restraint. Dumbledore resists seizing power, even when he knows he could. Instead, he positions others to act independently of him. His planned death removes Voldemort's suspicion, transfers control of the Elder Wand away from its true master, and forces Harry to mature without reliance on guidance. The war is won using Albus's blueprint. The moral cost is deliberately unresolved. He saves the wizarding world, but only by accepting that some people, especially Harry, will pay a personal price for that salvation. Harry Potter. Harry Potter's most influential action is choosing to walk into the Forbidden Forest, believing he is about to die. At this point in the story, Harry understands that he is an unintended Horcrux, and that his death is necessary to strip Voldemort of his final protection. There is no duel, no plan to escape, and no expectation of survival. He goes because that's how J.K. Rowling wrote it. I mean, because not going would mean others continue to die in his place. This decision fundamentally alters the mechanics of the war. By accepting death willingly, Harry replicates the same sacrificial magic his mother performed years earlier. That act extends protection to everyone fighting against Voldemort, weakening the Dark Lord's spells and breaking his dominance over the battlefield. Voldemort believes he is demonstrating power. In reality, he is dismantling it. Voldemort spends his life attempting to avoid death. Harry ends the conflict by accepting it. The series does not present Harry as the most intelligent, powerful, or strategic character. It presents him as the one who consistently chooses responsibility over self-preservation. That choice, repeated under increasing pressure, is what ultimately collapses Voldemort's entire worldview. Voldemort doesn't lose because his followers are weak. He loses because Neville cuts his snake in half with a big-ass sword. Oh, and because the people around him are powerful in very different ways. It's those differences that eventually fracture his control. Some Death Eaters rule through fear, others through loyalty, ideology, or sheer unpredictability. But none of them rule through love, the one power stronger than any dark magic Voldemort can conjure. Love, strong enough to unite a ragtag group of various witches and wizards, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, all united by a single cause, stop Voldemort by any means necessary. I still think guns would have worked better, though. In the next video, the most powerful Death Eaters in the Harry Potter story explained.